Hi, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Let's Slow Down podcast. I am so excited to have my good friend Gina Roof here today. She's from Simply Balanced with Gina, and she's a nutrition and wellness health coach, as well as a fitness instructor, wife, mom of three. She's my lifelong friend. And I joke that she's our resident health expert here on the podcast. I was looking back before this episode today, and it is her fifth appearance on the show. So, welcome back, Gina.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me. I always love an opportunity to be here.
Thank you so much for giving us your time. I know that you're busy these days doing lots of different things in the health world as well as personally. So, for anyone who, are new listeners that are new to you, why don't we start with a little background on your story and how you got into the health space?
Sure. So as Anne Marie said, I am a nutrition and wellness health coach. I was certified about almost 11 years ago now through the Institute for Integrative Nutrition. I was actually an elementary school teacher at the time, but nutrition was always something that pulled at me, and I knew I just had to pursue it. And it really was life changing for me because I unlearned so much and relearned so much, and really it gave me the opportunity to become super intuitive with myself and take my health back into my own hands. So I've loved inspiring other people, working with others to help them really get down to the most foundational and probably boring aspects of health, but that ones that really can truly just impact your overall life, your long-term health, and just help you foster helpful habits that are supportive for you.
It's oftentimes I find like the simpler things, the stuff that's like, well, yeah, obviously, but
Mhm.
we forget about them or they get overshadowed by everything else, or we're too busy to make them a priority. And they're the ones that make the biggest difference. So I love that you mentioned like unlearning and relearning these new habits because, especially as we get older, I think a lot of us fall into these ruts. We don't even realize that,
Right.
it's happening.
Mhm.
And we follow a lot of these like shoulds and we tell ourselves these certain things and we're just going, right? We're just going
Yeah.
along with it. And we stop listening to our
Right.
intuition quite a bit. And for me with the slowing down bit, that has been huge because I realized I was kind of pushing through or pushing past or trying to drown out these messages that were coming up. And our bodies are very, very powerful and they're very smart.
Mhm.
And I think if we just tune into them more, as you said, take our
Yeah.
health back into our own hands, we can cure a lot of our quote unquote health issues really on our own. Like we already have, I
Yeah.
think, a lot of what we need. We
You
just
have the
don't,
tools you need. Yeah.
yeah, we just don't let them come through. And that's why I always love talking to you because you make it very easy to understand and also easy to then go and do. Because sometimes there's so many, I mean, with social media, there's so many health
Oh,
messages out there and there's so many extremes. And you feel like,
yes.
well, like if I have one bite of sugar, then I just ruined everything.
Mhm.
Or if I don't get the, exact amount of sleep each night, then I'm a mess.
Right.
And like we always go
It's so
back to like my dad, old school doctor, everything in moderation, but it's so true.
right. Yeah.
And
Well,
just
there's so
keeping things
much
simple.
temptation and, like you said, extremes in the wellness world. So, what I always say, when you find yourself straying or chasing that new shiny object or that pill that promises, or that magic wand, come back to the basics because it is the boring stuff that has the most impact. And it's hard, and it's true. We get pulled from things, but when you really step back, like if you're not feeling well, when you really step back and look at your habits, sometimes like the answer is there. We just don't want to always be honest with ourselves.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, we don't always want to hear it, or see
Yeah.
it, but it's so true. And the sleep stuff has been, I mean, I've been fascinated with this for years. And I think for as long as I can remember, I've had sleep issues. Like even as a kid, my parents would joke that
Mhm.
I'd be up like watching Johnny Carson with them because I would never fall asleep and I'd be up watching the late night shows. And um, I don't know, just was like that for a really long time. And eventually in my like young adulthood, it caught up to me and I realized,
Mhm.
oh, I don't actually function that well without, I used to think I just don't need a lot of sleep. I really just don't
Right.
need a lot of sleep, but definitely isn't the case. And it's probably not necessarily the case for anybody. I'm sure we all have different like ideal amounts for our own
Mhm.
bodies, but I have just noticed so much, and I see it, we all see it so much clearer in our children, especially
Yeah.
the little ones. Like if they don't get enough sleep, they're
Ugh,
just, they can't function, you
right.
know? And then you see the big ones like us, and you're like, oh, actually, I'm not functioning that well either. It comes across not exactly as like a temper tantrum, but it comes out in
Oh,
different ways. And a lot of
yeah,
times it is like, it's just, oh, I just need to get a good night's sleep. And
sleep.
I'll think about it again tomorrow and it'll be a whole different, I'll just have a whole
Yeah,
different perspective. So,
yeah, everything's harder when you're tired.
yes, yes, yes. And at least now, sometimes, not always, but I'll catch myself at night and I'm like, I just need to turn
I
this
just
off,
that's
you
it.
know, turn my mind
Done
off
for the
and go
day.
to sleep and
Yeah,
I'll think about it tomorrow. Like, this is not productive.
right. Yeah, for sure.
Oh, so
Uh,
I had been doing all the health and wellness episodes and we were talking about trying to find a sleep expert. And then you reached out to me and you're like, I took a whole continuing ed course on sleep. So I said, perfect. Like, let's have you on. Let's dive into this topic. And, today I have asked you to just share some insights from the course that you took and just, I mean, sleep is a major player in wellness. So
yes.
if you can just kind of talk us through just some actionable, like just reasons why we know we need to
Yeah,
get more sleep, but like why
okay.
and how? Like, how can we
Yeah,
do it? Especially those busy people who have the busy minds and the busy worlds and who are trying to slow down, but maybe by the time their head hits the pillow, they're still
mhm.
going, they're
Yeah,
kind of turning things over about their day and having trouble getting to sleep. So,
right. Wired but tired, yeah, for sure.
yes, yes, exactly. So, I guess like let's start. Like, why is sleep so vital to our overall health and well-being?
Okay, yeah, so I actually love talking about sleep. I do so much with, like, cooking and nutrition, and I love that. I think that is so important. But listen, your sleep is a major factor in your overall health. Like I said, everything is harder when you're tired. Um, and if you want to feel better and be more in control of your choices, of your stress, of your eating habits, you need to work on your sleep. The problem is we know we wanna sleep better, but again, it's being honest with yourself. Sometimes we don't wanna commit to doing the things that we need to do to sleep better. However, it is simpler than you think. It really can be much simpler than you think. Um, so yeah, I mean, if you wanna start, we'll talk about some of the benefits of sleep. It's obvious, but some of the things, obviously it improves our energy, our mood, but even like physically, so or like biological, like inside of our bodies, it's what regulates our hormone levels, it regulates our hunger hormones, it helps our metabolism, it helps our cellular function, it facilitates muscle recovery, even like detoxification. Like we're doing all these things when we sleep is literally our body's chance to slow down and heal, right? But it even like benefits like our cognitive function. So a lot like sleep is so important for our brain, our memory, problem solving, decision making, our creativity, our production, like everything that we do, our brain really benefits from sleep. And then our emotional functioning too. So it's physical, it's mental, and it's emotional because, like you said, like sometimes when you're just so fired up from the day and you're like, I'm done, like sleep does help us to process our emotions and to kind of restore. So sometimes you wake up even for a moment just feeling a little bit better, and then the stress of the day might kick in. But
Yep.
but yeah, like when you're day after day getting insufficient sleep, it's gonna lower your immunity, so your immune system's down. We talked about your cognitive function, but your energy is down. So when your energy is low, like I said, everything's harder, but also you're more irritable. You experience more anxiety. It actually does mess up your. I'm not gonna go deeply into this, but like your hunger hormone is ghrelin, which like helps us with cravings, even your insulin levels are off. So if you find that you're, turning to food for energy and things like obviously we need food for energy, but you're having a lot of cravings throughout the day, especially for sugar, it could be tied to insufficient sleep. So those are just some of the obvious things with
Yeah. It's
why
so
it's so important.
interesting. So interesting. And I found that I oftentimes realize that at night, like I need to just go to bed and
Yeah.
except I'm like, oh, I kind of want like a little bit of dessert now. And
Yeah.
9:30 and it's not the time to start eating chocolate chips, which is what I did last night actually. So,
Mhm. Yeah,
but yeah, I think it's like your body's looking for like a fast little bit of energy, right? Because
energy.
it's
Yeah.
tired.
Yeah,
So,
there's patterns throughout the day when your body is gonna chase that energy, and a lot of times it's, like, maybe mid-morning right before lunch, then it's maybe, like, mid-afternoon when you hit that slump, and then again at night. But instead of, like, at that point, maybe it's like, okay, sleep instead of a snack. And if you
yeah,
do want the sweet treat, we've talked about this before, have it closer to your dinner
right.
when your body's working to, already breaking down the food and stuff. But yeah, because even your blood sugar, so we'll talk about, like, I'll actually just say it now, like, you wanna actually front load your sleep. And what I mean by that is figure out what's going on in the morning, because how you start your day really is going to dictate a lot of how the rest of the day plays out. So, making sure from the start of the day you're eating to help your blood stabilize your blood sugar. So, you are getting enough protein and fiber throughout the day for all of your meals so that you're not having those like blood sugar spikes, because that is going to still be at play later on at night, and that can affect your quality of sleep. So thinking of how you start your day and the meals that you're having throughout the day can really actually be a factor in your quality of sleep.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I know, interesting, right?
Very interesting. I was telling you right before we hit record that another one of our friends, Ronnie Filipados Fernandez, who's been on a couple times as well, her and I do this little Bible reading and we do it every morning and on all different topics. And this one is about balance in our lives. And today happened to be all about sleep and rest, which I thought was so funny since I was planning to speak with you today too. And there was a quote in there by someone named Norval Hayes, who's helped people get out of like negative thoughts
Mhm.
through recognizing the importance of rest. And I just thought it was so interesting because they said that like basically when you're tired, it breeds like negativity and just like you're pessimistic and
Mhm.
your whole outlook, your whole mindset. And I'm trying to pull up the quote exactly because it's
Yeah, I'm
worth
curious.
sharing. Yeah, tired people lean toward problems. Rested people lean toward answers.
Ooh.
And they say he's helped many people get out of depression and our negativity just by getting them to take a break and rest. And I thought that was really powerful because how often do we kind of lean
Yeah.
towards like this? Yeah, we lean toward the problem. We focus on it. I know
Yeah.
I do that all the time. You kind of harp on those things rather than like when you're rested and you're energized
Mhm.
and you're thinking clearly, you can approach an issue in your life with, okay, what's the answer? What am I trying to create here? What's the end goal rather than just harping on the problem, you know?
Yeah.
So I feel like it's like the mindset, like you said, the emotional and the mental piece of it is so important
Yeah. Oh,
and
for
really
sure.
impactful. Yeah.
But yeah, we do need like and I think it was one of your podcasts. I listened to it 2 or 3 times. I think it was like Simplicity Parenting. He was brilliant, but it's true. Our
Mhm.
life is absorb, 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 and we don't give our body a chance to digest and get into that parasympathetic nervous system where we can actually rest and restore and repair, and sleep is a time for, when that should be happening. So, you know, we need that downtime. Like physically, mentally, emotionally need downtime.
Yes. Yeah. Our brains need a break. Our
Yes.
body needs a break,
Mhm.
and our brains do too. And before I want to make sure that I don't forget to ask you this, and I don't know if there's truly an answer, but how much sleep do we actually need? Like, I know there's a range, but
Right. Yeah.
what do you think about this? And the quality versus the quantity too, because I
Yeah.
know sometimes like our
Mhm.
sleeps, we have poor sleep and it doesn't matter how
Yeah.
many hours of the poor sleep you're getting, right?
Yeah. This was actually so the course that I took, it broke sleep down into 5 things, which is the quantity, the quality, the architecture, which we're not gonna talk about today. That's like the cyclical pattern of sleeping, your timing or consistency, and then the supportive habits, which I call sleep hygiene, which we're really gonna focus on. It is personal. And also your sleep needs are going to shift just as your body is always constantly changing and evolving. Your sleep needs will change and evolve, right? So obviously little kids need what, like 11, like they need like crazy amounts of sleep because their
Yeah.
bodies are growing and changing. And then, it's kind of like what season you're in. Like when you're a teen 20s, like, you know, sleep tomorrow, but tonight go crazy kind of thing, like
Exactly.
Bruno Mars
Exactly.
says, like, and then maybe you have babies or toddlers and sleep is like, I'll sleep when I'm lucky, when I get the chance, and you're just in a perpetual state of being tired. I feel like I'm kind of in my sweet spot now because my kids are, and like, I have an almost 6-year-old and I have an 11-year-old. So I'm not a night, like, I don't have to be waiting up. Like in a few years when I have teenagers, my whole night is going to shift. But now I really have trained myself to kind of wind down with them and get in bed with them, right? But also as females, like, and entering even perimenopause, like your sleep needs might increase because like your body is changing, but it's harder to sleep. Men typically can get away with a little bit less sleep. So yeah, you do want to aim for 7 to 9 hours. Some people can function on 6 hours. It really is going to be when you can help your sleep a little bit, then your body naturally tires at a certain time, and what you have like an internal alarm clock, like
Hmm.
that is probably your range. And for me, I mean, I've obviously been super focused on my sleep for the past like 3 years. I am 8 hours and like 15 minutes. Like if I can get 8 hours and 15 minutes, it is like exactly what I need. So it's hard to say for the exact person, but it is
Hmm.
somewhere between 7 to 9. 9, I feel like, is a little bit more unrealistic. Some people thrive on 6. But when you can get a little bit more consistent with the timing of when you're going to bed and waking, that is something that's super important. Trying to have a little bit of consistency around that,
Yes,
your body
I've
will
heard that.
naturally, like, which I'll talk about circadian rhythm in a little bit, but that was a great question. But again, it is quality over quantity because you can have 9 hours of crappy sleep and
Hmm.
6 hours of really great sleep, and it makes all the difference. So, when we talk about some of the sleep hygiene, I'll talk about how you can hopefully improve the quality of your sleep.
Definitely. I think
Yeah.
we can all use that.
So, yeah, I mean, do you like can jump right in. Do you want to
Yeah,
talk
go
about
ahead.
like
Go
so when
ahead.
I
Yep.
say sleep hygiene, like it's a funny kind of a funny word, but it's really just like a set of practices and habits that promote quality sleep and your overall sleep health. Um, so let's like let's kind of break it down. Um, I was saying how, I like to start in the morning. And this was fascinating to me. I have always been a fan of the sun. I love sunshine. Um, but when I learned like the benefits of sunlight and how you can actually use it to help improve your overall health, but even your sleep. So sunlight affects sleep in so many ways. First of all, what it does is it helps to sync up our circadian rhythm. So I don't want to just assume that anyone knows what circadian rhythm means. Circadian rhythm is basically like your wake sleep cycle. It's very connected to the sunlight. Our bodies are very connected to nature, but we just kind of get pulled. But it's our body has its own internal clock, right? So certain periods throughout the day, like different hormones are released and whatnot. We have peaks of alertness, we have peaks of downtime, and you want to be very connected to your circadian rhythm. So the best way to do that is through connecting to the sun. So I always tell my clients, and if you're following my Instagram page, like I always say sunlight before blue light. If you can get into the habit of when you wake up, before looking at your phone, maybe just tap it to see that there's no emergencies, looking out your window, and I don't mean direct, like obviously safely. You're not, I never want to look directly at the sun, but just gazing out your window and getting natural sunlight on your eyes, even for 30 seconds, because this will regulate your circadian rhythm. It will boost your morning cortisol at the right time. Like we always, think cortisol is a bad thing. We don't want to be in a high state of cortisol, but we need cortisol throughout the day. It helps with alertness. It helps with our energy levels, our energy crashes. But it also, when it's released at the right time, is really important because if you're reaching for your phone, you're actually tricking your brain. Your brain sees the light from your phone and it thinks it's the afternoon. So your cortisol spikes like abnormally almost. Whereas when you gaze out the window, your brain starts to understand that, oh, it's 6:30 a.m., it's 7 a.m. And that cascade of hormones is able to be released in a realistic way, in a beneficial way. It also increases melatonin production for later at night. Like that actually starts earlier in the day. Like we
That's
think of
interesting.
melatonin as the nighttime hormone, but sunlight throughout the day can actually improve that. And sunlight has been shown to provide deeper, more restorative sleep. So I think that's like really, really important. Another thing I have to just quickly mention is we've become like a society that, like, as soon as we step out of the house, we put sunglasses on our face. We're constantly shielding our eyes from natural sunlight. They're the best accessory. There's all these cute sunglasses now. And listen, I love a cute pair of sunglasses just as much as the next gal. But if you could give yourself even 5 to 10 minutes before putting the sunglasses on. Now it's different if you're on the beach and the sand and water reflecting out on you, if you're standing on a blacktop, or whatever you're doing. I don't know. If you're a roofer, like, and you're in the sun, like, obviously you need to protect your eyes. However, giving yourself a little bit of sunshine, because sunglasses actually block some of those key wavelengths that we
Mm.
need to help with that hormonal cascade. So really fascinating. So that's number one. Number two, we talked really quickly about breaking your fast with adequate protein and fiber to stabilize the blood sugar throughout the day. You really want to really minimize spikes in blood sugar for so many reasons. But today, obviously, we're talking about sleep. It will help your sleep. And then if you can incorporate movement earlier in the day, believe it or not, when you get movement in the day, like, it tires your body. Your body will, like, I remember being an athlete in high school, like, sometimes you're just so tired, like, it tires your body in a good way.
Right.
So that's the morning. Like, don't underestimate the power of a good morning routine. There's like books about like your morning, like
Oh,
it's
yeah. I'm so fascinated by it. I've read a ton of like the Miracle Morning. I've done episodes about that and I've followed
yeah,
it too. And it's so helpful. And it doesn't, I always say like it doesn't have to be long. Like we
no,
make it seem like it all has to be these like intricate routines and all these things to
no,
follow, but it can be like 5 minutes and just like you're
yeah.
saying, just waking up in a more healthy way and making sure you're eating something. That was one other thing I want to ask you. You said like high protein. So it's important to eat breakfast, but
Mhm.
it's also important to eat the right breakfast, right? So
Right.
like lots of protein in there. And I think, did you tell me once it's like 3 eggs or something is like the amount of protein?
So,
Did you tell
yeah,
me that?
I try not to get caught up in, like, exact measurements, because
Hmm.
I, growing up, like, could get obsessive with stuff like that, and it really didn't benefit me. Like, I had more stress around food than the food itself, it's like the stress was worse than the food itself. But, females typically, like, even if you can get around 20 to 30 grams per meal, like, not everyone needs to eat their body weight in protein, but 20 to 30 grams should be sufficient. But so 3 eggs is about 20 grams of protein.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it helps to just have like a mental image
And
of like
I yeah,
how
so,
much
like, a
it is.
fist-sized piece of meat is
Hmm.
probably anywhere from, like, 25 to 30 grams. A cup of yogurt is about 20 grams. Cottage cheese might be, like, 25 grams, something like that. Beans are a good source of protein. Adding in things like ground flaxseed, like, you can up your protein in easier ways. Like, you don't have
Right.
to wake up and eat eggs and sausage every
Right.
morning. A smoothie, so, but yeah.
Okay. Good to know. Yeah. And
Yeah.
you're supposed to do that before your coffee, right?
Well, that's a real personal thing. If you struggle with anxiety or GI issues from coffee, like, if like, for me, it was like really becoming a problem because I was drinking so much coffee and not eating and then I was like jittery and anxious and things like that. And it was really bothering my stomach. But it's not a bad idea. But again, that's it's not a blanket statement for everyone, I
Okay.
would say. But definitely I think I would venture to say it's probably more important what you break your fast with than when, because not everyone is hungry within the first half hour of eating, and that's okay.
Right.
Like, we should be, like, we probably should be, but, if you're not like, so I'll usually have something to hold me over, like, with my coffee. Like, I always make baked goods, then I up the protein, and then I'll have a little of that with my coffee, and then I'll eat when I'm really hungry at, like, 10:30, and have, like, something substantial. So, it's really tuning into your listen, like you even said, listening to your body and
Yep.
honoring your hunger instead of following the rules. Well, it's breakfast time, so I should eat breakfast, right?
Right. Yeah. Because sometimes you first thing you really don't feel like eating
Yeah.
a ton of protein or just a ton of food in general.
Yeah, for
Okay.
sure.
Good to know.
Um, yeah. So that definitely. Yeah. So how you start your day though, like, and then how you end your day. Like, those are the 2 points. If you can just even become aware and mindful of the start to your day and the end of your day, I feel like things in between will fall into place a little bit more. So, like, things you can be doing in the evening. I have a question for everyone listening. I want you to think, like, in your own life, like, what be honest with yourself. What are you doing in the 30 to 60 minutes before your head hits the pillow? Like, so are you sending the message to yourself that it's time to wind down, or is it still like business as usual? And especially I think with moms, like we want the house clean and we're helping with the homework and and then we're like, oh, I'm going to watch an episode of my favorite intense show and I'm going to scroll on my phone. And we say, well, I need this is my time like to scroll. And like I get that because I do it too, but that can actually be sabotaging our health because we think it's relaxing us. But again, whenever you're looking at that phone and that blue light, it's actually you keeping you in that wake state. So I'm not saying like you can't ever, because I do it too. But one thing that's really helped me is I do replace scrolling at night with reading a book. I've been loving reading lately. But just be aware of what you're doing in those 30 to 60 minutes before bed and try to be mindful around it. So it could be something as simple as like reducing all the overhead lighting in your house. Like I did have dimmers put in, and that's actually I think it's a really easy thing to do.
Yeah, I love
But
doing that too. I can't
yeah,
stand like the
I
bright lights at night.
oh, I become so much more sensitive to it
Yep.
once I turn 40, I think. But like reducing overhead lighting, maybe getting into comfy clothes. If you have any time of nighttime routine, like, whatever it is, but really trying to step away from stressful tasks and like put them on a to-do list for tomorrow because chances are like you even said you're not even in productive mode at that point to like do them efficiently, you
Everything
just
takes
feel the
way longer
panic.
at that hour, I think.
Yeah, and then
Yeah.
you're operating from a place of like, panic and,
Mhm.
stress rather than so, like, try to minimize the stressful tasks, and even just be aware of the shows you're watching. Like, my husband loves intense shows, and he'll get in bed and turn on, like, and there's, like, guns shooting in the background, and I'm trying to read, and I'm like, "Oh, this is, like, really impacting my cortisol levels," um, so yeah, just be aware of that, and, like, even you said, like, you don't wanna go to bed hungry, but you also wanna allow adequate time to digest. So I think, again, there's a sweet spot there with finding, like, have I eaten enough at dinner for a balanced meal that I'm not gonna be hungry a little bit later? And if I do have a sweet tooth, eating it a little bit closer to dinner, because when you eat too close to bedtime, don't forget, now you're triggering, like, your liver and all your digestive organs to have to work because 'cause they're already ready, prepared to help digest overnight, but now you're throwing more on top, like, so
Yes.
but you don't
Yeah.
wanna go to bed hungry either. Like, so I'm like, "Well, don't go to bed hungry, but don't eat too," but you know what I like, so
Well, I find it's like a lot of times lately we've been eating dinner a little bit earlier. It just
uh-huh.
is what's working with our family and everybody's routines. And if I go to bed too late, then it's almost like, okay, it's getting to the point where it's like time for another meal because maybe I ate dinner at
Yeah.
5 o'clock or something. But I'm really, most of the time, I really am just tired. It's just really time to
Mhm.
go to sleep.
Yeah.
And because I don't need another meal, I don't need I don't need to fuel myself for more right now. I need to
Yeah.
just wind down and just being aware of
Yeah.
it, just starting to
Right.
notice, like, what it's telling you, like, when it's coming up and maybe what it means, or
Yeah.
maybe adjusting, like, the dinner time or whatever it might
Mhm.
be to get through to
Or again,
the
eating enough
sure.
balance at dinner. But
Yep.
I think there's a difference, like, when if you're really hungry, like, you get that gnawing in your stomach, then I would just suggest having, like, a snack that has a little protein in it. So even, like, a little bit of Greek yogurt or, like, a Yasso like, something that maybe is a little bit lower on the sugar, handful of nuts, a little scoop of peanut butter and banana, something like dark cherries and cottage cheese. I don't know, something that's, like, still a little bit sweet, but a little bit of protein as well to tide you over can be helpful. Um, so yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Very good tips
yeah.
there.
And then like we have to talk about the state of your bedroom too, because that was a big thing that came up in my lecture. And then I've actually listened to a lot of sleep podcasts because like I said, I've been fascinated. But like I said, you do want to try to aim to be consistent, but your bedroom, especially if you are a type A personality that cannot function in chaos and clutter. And I know you have a lot of people that you interview about clutter. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time but clutter is mentally draining. It can be very distracting.
Yes. Very much
So
so.
maybe and it doesn't take long to clean up your bedroom. It's not like the kids' toys that you're trying to organize. Like
Right.
if you have unfolded laundry, give yourself those 5 to 10 minutes to get your room a little bit more orderly. If it's because you don't even realize, like you don't know what your brain is picking up on. You don't even realize. Like you might not even be focused on the clothes, but like part of your brain knows that it's there. So
Oh, yeah.
I would say just spend like take those 5 minutes to just like straight tidy up a bit. Really, really make sure your room is cool. So I think I'm pretty sure the temperature that they recommended in my study was like 65 degrees, which sounds cold.
Yeah,
So
I think I've even heard, like, 58
well,
before.
it's even
Yeah,
like the hot like, so you want your atmosphere it doesn't mean you can't put blankets on you, but your
right.
atmospheric pressure, you want your core body temperature actually lower. That is a great way to promote more deep, restful sleep. If you're hot, like, it's so hard to sleep when you're hot, right? So lowering not forgetting to lowering the heat or turning on a fan, something to keep you and your body cool, getting out as much darkness as you can. So if you do fall asleep to the television or if you keep a hallway light on or like a nightlight, believe it or not, that could actually be impacting your sleep because we do want darkness. So maybe investing in like a little sleep mask. They're super cheap on Amazon, like something as simple as that. Um, and then quiet, like you really, and it's hard because like I live on a busy street. My bedroom's actually on the other side of my two girls, like they face the busy street. So sometimes I'm like, oh, but making sure cool, dark, calm, and quiet your room is
I think
really
that one is
important.
so important, so,
Yeah.
so important because I know I personally am, like, very sensitive to all that stuff, and it makes a
Yeah.
huge difference, and I've
Hmm.
pared my room. I mean, I am, like, obviously a huge fan of decluttering, but I've pared my room down so much, like,
Hmm.
we don't keep a TV in there, we don't really it's
Yeah.
really, like, very minimal, very there's just, like, the basics in there, and I do think that it really does promote
Yeah.
better sleep. I do.
And also, you just reminded me of something. Another thing I learned: our brains are extremely associative. So your bed should be used for very few things. Very few things.
Yep.
So if you find yourself doing a lot of awake tasks in your bed, like some people like work from home and they're like literally sitting in their bed with like a lap desk, or they're eating in bed, or they're watching shows for hours. Not saying you can't watch a show or two, like that's because you're unwinding, but like you watch full on movies with your bed wine, you know what I mean? Like whatever it is, or just you want like your brain associates your bed now with also being awake. So you want your brain to associate your bed with just rest and sleep. So that's a really important, like fascinating thing. So
Yeah.
if you do struggle with staying asleep, I want you to examine that. Like, what else are you doing in your bed or your bedroom? And I know, like with COVID, like some people had to turn their bedroom into an office. Like I just had a conversation with someone, and she's like, "It's just not working for me anymore because your bedroom, I understand. Like I don't have a huge house either. Like you might have to do that, but like understand that, like it could be impacting your sleep."
Right.
So that's one thing to examine because I know people are like, okay, I feel like I'm doing all the right things, but I can't sustain my sleep. So that could be one area. Other areas to look at, we talked about like, are you perpetually wearing sunglasses or shielding yourself from sunlight? What's the timing of your last cup of caffeine? Like, be honest with yourself
Mhm.
because caffeine stays in your system. I want to say like a quarter of your caffeine intake stays in your system for like hours. So like be mindful by noon, like maybe, I shouldn't be having or switch to decaf.
Yep.
Your alcohol consumption,
That's a big
alcohol like
one. That one
puts
has
us to
totally
sleep.
affected my sleep as I've
Oh,
gotten older. And, like,
because
it's not a lot. Like, I could have maybe 1, 2 glasses of wine, and I don't sleep as well.
yeah, it
It's
it
crazy.
affects all, like
Yeah.
I could talk for, I'm not gonna go into that, but it does affect your hormones, your lip,
Yep.
like your everything's working overtime. Alcohol puts you to bed quickly, but it's very disruptive on your
Mhm.
sleep. So be aware of that. We talked about like your blood sugar throughout the day. Like, are you eating balanced throughout the day? Are you getting movement in? So, be honest about that. And then if you're still having trouble sleeping, because there are, I mean, even me, like I have days when I have like a lot on my mind.
Yep.
I think some of the best things you can do are to brain dump. So when my mind is racing, like we've talked about, like I'm not going to be productive. I can't do anything at this point. So maybe just getting it off my mind, jotting it down, whether it's in a to-do list or a brain dumping, whatever, and put it to the side, get it out of my brain. Um, you could, if you're into meditation, a light sleep meditation can maybe put you to bed, some different breath work. I love doing like where you tense all your muscles. Have you ever tried that? Like you start with your
Mhm.
toes and you work your way up, tensing all the muscles and then releasing if you're into white noise. But if you are like, we all have those nights when you're up for like what feels like hours and hours and hours and you just can't get to bed, remove yourself from your bed. I learned this from, again, my sleep course and I'm trying to remember who the doctor was. because again, your body is associative. So remove yourself from your bed, go to a couch, go to another bedroom and find a calm task. Like turn the TV on quiet and watch a relaxing show, read a book, and then when you feel tired, then get back in bed because
Oh,
you don't.
interesting.
Yeah, I was like, "Oh, that's really interesting." So I've done that a few I'm lucky, like my sleep has been much better now, but there was like a few nights when I just could not turn it off and I got out of bed, I went downstairs and read on the couch.
What are
So
your thoughts? Yeah, those are great.
yeah.
Oh, and another one. I have a question for you in a minute, but before
Mhm.
I forget, another one that I've sometimes I'll do this, and I read there's like a ton of benefits from. I think it's a yoga pose actually, like
Yeah.
laying with
Legs up
your yeah your legs up on the wall and just
yeah,
laying
legs
there
up
for
the
a few
wall.
minutes. That is so calming to me, and
Mhm.
sometimes that if I feel like I need something to unwind, I'll do that, and I
Yes.
feel like I do fall asleep easier.
Yes. That's a great pose, and that's actually, like, very beneficial, I think, for females during their cycle as well, because you're not in a full, inversion, but it's a very relaxing pose. So, basically, what you would do is you would kinda wiggle your butt up against the wall and put your legs straight up so you're in, like, an L shape. So, it's called legs up
Yeah,
the
just
wall
lay
pose,
there
and
for a
that's
couple
great.
minutes. I think they
Yeah,
said 5 minutes had like
yeah,
all these crazy benefits, and you just lay
right.
there. So
Yes.
that's a good one.
Yeah,
I feel
that's a
like
good
it's
one. Yep.
very relaxing.
Mhm.
But I wanted to ask you, what are your thoughts too on like melatonin? I know we should be getting it
Uh,
naturally, but taking
yeah.
melatonin.
That's tricky. I don't love to talk too much about supplements because I really do try to stay in my scope of practice, but I think you have to be careful with melatonin. I think that, well, first of all, any supplements, there are quality brands and there are
Sure.
crappy brands, but also it's knowing the dosage because the dose makes the poison. Like you could be actually taking too much melatonin or, um, I think honestly, magnesium is probably even like a better supplement,
Hmm.
like a safer, easier supplement. Especially like a glycinate or like a chelate that combines like a few different brands. I personally take magnesium. My husband started taking it. He noticed a big shift in his sleep. But yeah,
Okay.
melatonin's tricky. I'm not saying it's terrible, but it can, sometimes have the adverse effect. And it's hard to
Yes,
know. It's really like exploring your own needs and the amount. So
for sure. Okay,
yeah,
good
but
to know.
again, if you're doing all the things that we talked like, especially with, like, sunlight in the morning, you also, I can't believe I forgot to talk about the sleep spot of sweet spot of sleep. So you see this with, like, babies and toddlers. Have you ever like, they miss their nap and then they're just wired, right? So,
Hmm.
like, adults have that too, like, so a lot of times our sweet spot of sleep is before 11 because I think melatonin really kicks in from like 11 to 11:30ish kind of time. So you kind of want to beat that. You want to like be asleep before that so your melatonin. So there are ways to like kind of biohack your melatonin
Yes.
production
Yep, I've heard
without
that. I
having
something I
supplements.
read, I can't remember like the science behind it, but they said the sleep that you get before midnight
Mhm.
is more I don't know, more beneficial or deeper or
Yes.
something than the sleep that we get after midnight. So like the
Right.
earlier you can go to bed, the more quality
Yeah.
sleep you get, I guess.
Right, that goes more along with, like, the structure of sleep that I said we weren't gonna talk much about, but yes, it's fascinating, it really is. That's why, like, trying to get to bed before 11, it's hard, but, like, 10:15 is my sweet spot. If I can be asleep by 10:30, it's really great. Like, I feel different when I wake up,
Yeah.
so,
Yeah, so noticing that, knowing what our
yeah.
time is. And you were talking about the consistency and I've read that a million times and I find it in my own sleep schedule as well, like just being really consistent. But what do we do on the weekends?
Yeah,
Because, if you don't have to get up if you're getting up at 5:30 every day for work, fine, you go to bed earlier, but like do we have a little like how much are we going to mess ourselves up if we go to
yeah,
sleep a little bit later and maybe sleep in a little bit later on the weekends? Like is that detrimental? Is
yeah.
it better to keep that routine on the weekends if you can? What would you
So
recommend?
yeah, I don't know that I have the right answer for this, but I think you have a little bit of leeway. The problem is a lot of times, like, we're pulled out of our sleep because people, especially like in teach, like when you have a profession where you actually have to go to work, which, more and more, I think we're going back to that. But you're being pulled out of your sleep maybe at like 5:30, 5:45, even 6 o'clock when you're actually not ready to wake up. So like
Hmm.
that right there is your first like micro stress of the day. Um, it's not allowing your body to have that internal alarm clock because you're being forced by an external alarm clock. Whereas on the weekend, you can sleep a little bit more, but I wouldn't recommend like sleeping the day away either. Like, so I'm fortunate because where I am right now, like making my own schedule, like I get up around 6:45, 7, but my body naturally wakes up. So on the weekends, guess what? I'm up by 7, 7:15, like in that same range. So I know it's tough. If you can yeah, it's hard because like I said, if you're being robbed of the sleep that you really
Right.
need on the weekends, you might be sleeping a little bit more naturally. So, but I wouldn't make it like a 3-hour difference,
Right.
you
Right.
know?
Right. So like if your normal wake up is 5:30, then sleeping in might be 6:15, just
Yeah,
giving yourself a
yeah.
little bit extra. But yeah, and you know what I find personally, then I kind of just naturally am getting up earlier. Like you
Mhm.
just get used to a certain
You
wake up
do, your
time,
body
and
kind of
it's really
adjusts.
more adjusting that bedtime. Like, okay, if my wake up time's getting earlier, then it's got to be adjusted on the front end with going to
Yes.
sleep earlier.
Right,
Make the
yeah,
biggest
and like that
difference.
shift a
Yeah,
little bit. I know, which is hard because it's you don't wanna give up your downtime at night either, but,
exactly. But like
but
you
really
said,
it's
there's different tweaks we can do. And
mhm,
and if we, yes, we need time to unwind and relax, but if we think we're going to start being productive, like once all
yeah.
the kids are in bed and all the dishes have been washed and all the plans have been made for the next day, like it's probably not the time to start something like
Right,
big or new and important, right? Save
exactly.
it. Save it. Brain dump it and do
Use
it in
it.
the morning. You'll do it
Right,
way quicker anyway.
mhm. Yeah, and there's all these, like, apps now that you can track your peaks throughout the day, like, your productive peaks and then downtime, and, like, it's not a bad thing to listen to, like, if your downtime corresponds with, like, your lunch hour, maybe just take the ti like, take a 10-minute like, I'm not saying take a whole hour, whatever it is, but if you know you have, like, a peak moment, like, that's when you can do those tasks that are weighing on you in your productivity zone, you know?
Yes. Yes. I
But your
think that
sleep is
that's
only gonna
really
help,
helpful.
it's gonna make everything easier,
Yep.
so but you have to
And it's
commit
like
a
we
little
don't want to measure our life on like being productive, but we do have to be
bit.
productive. Like
Oh,
we
yeah.
all have our things that we need to do. So we might as well just, I guess, like be more efficient with it, right? And
That's
like,
well, I think that's working smarter, not harder, like,
yes, yes,
recognizing your moments of production and giving yourself grace, like, there's, like, a thing, and it's, like, Monday 100%, Tuesday 20%, Wednesday 40%, but you gave 100% of the percentage that you had. You know what I'm saying? Like, some
yes,
days you don't have like, you give what you can versus always feeling like every single second has to be productive, like,
right.
meet yourself where you're at, I
So
think.
true. We are not robots. We are not
Yeah.
machines. We use a lot of machines and then we think we're the same way, but we are
Mhm.
not. And like a computer, you turn it on, turn it off. Your phone, you can turn it off.
Yeah,
We
but
can't just turn our bodies
no,
off. Like there is
it's
that
very hard.
winding down, the gradual, and the same thing with getting up, as you said.
Yeah.
So huge. Um, What else? Any little, just
I
for
feel good.
people listening that are like us. They're busy working moms, they've got a lot going on. Um, like you've given us so many tips, but what would be like the one thing you'd say, if you can do anything, try doing this to make your sleep a little bit better, you'll feel a little
Yeah.
bit better.
I'd say start with your morning. Like, remove the stress around, like, what I should be doing at nighttime and start with your morning. Like, I can't even tell you how much that domino affects into your overall health. So, avoiding your phone like, our phone does nothing but stress us out. Like, it's a great place for connection, but we don't realize internally what it's actually doing. So, try to ease into your day. Give yourself the grace, get your eyes on some sunlight, hydrate your body and see. And then I guess the next thing would be like have a little bit of a wind down routine. Like send that message even 30 minutes before. Okay, I deserve to be comfortable right now. Um and do the simple things. Like don't just do the simplest
Yeah.
things and those little habits grow and they get bigger and stronger. So,
Yeah. And you begin to crave them, those little
mhm.
things. Like
Yeah, they become ritual,
they really do. And I've established a pretty solid morning routine. And
That's great.
it's something that I genuinely cherish and look forward
Mhm.
to. So it's not like a chore. It's not like, oh, I
Right.
have to get up earlier so that because I have to
Oh,
do the
no, no.
Bible reader. I have to do the thing. I just love doing it so much. So I want to
Yes,
get up to do that thing.
right. I would
And
never tell anyone to get up an hour early to do all like, no, you get up when you
right.
get up, but just what is the first thing you're doing when you like, yeah,
Yeah. And just like integrating things that are really like
support.
genuinely things that are going to support you.
good for you.
that
Yeah.
you like doing. You know, I know like they say the same thing with exercise, like,
Mhm.
find exercises that you actually like, find the movement that you like
Right.
doing.
Yeah.
It changes everything. Like,
Everything.
so just not looking at as from the perspective of it, this is like another thing on the
Another
list,
thing.
but
Yeah.
it's a
And
privilege.
habit stack,
Yeah.
like, if you're setting up your coffee in the morning, maybe do like a light stretch, like grab your hands behind your back and just stretch for a second or take a deep breath while you're standing there waiting anyway instead of grabbing for your phone. Right? Like anytime there's downtime, we're waiting in line, we're waiting for something where it's the phone right in our faces.
Mhm.
So, habit stack with something a little bit more supportive than stressful.
That is a great tip. Yeah, just a
That's
couple
hard to
deep
do.
breaths. Like I've been
Yeah.
focusing
Oh
a lot
yeah.
on that, and just like 3 deep breaths
Yeah.
can instantly calm you down and just make you
Yeah.
feel more grounded. It's
Right.
amazing. You can do that while you're waiting in line. You can do it at a
Yeah.
red light. It's
Yes. I've
so
actually
simple.
flipped that switch. So, because I get myself like where I'm always in a rush. So, now I say like if I'm like even in traffic, like I'm at a red light and I really need to move, I'm like, okay, here's my chance to breathe. Even in the morning when I'm like waiting for my shower water to warm up, I'll do like a quick breath or stretch or something like restorative. So like link it to those moments of that you're panicked and just,
Yes.
so
Oh, love it.
love
I
it.
love it. Um, Last question. Do you have any favorite resources? Maybe you do. I didn't ask you this ahead of time, but any favorite resources like books or websites or podcasts like that you can think of off the top of your head that have been really
Gosh.
helpful to you?
Oh my gosh. Um, well, I love your honestly, I'm not just like plugging you here, but all of your podcasts that focus on simplicity and decluttering have been like super helpful for me because I don't think how we've just be, gotten in such a world of like clutter, everywhere. So
Mhm.
your podcasts are super helpful. I have to get the name for this. I think it might have been a Huberman podcast on sleep. That was a really great one. I'm in the middle of reading Dr. Peter Adia, his book called Outlive. That's a great book on just like, your health and stuff.
Okay,
But
great.
overall, I've gotten better of navigating Instagram and the wellness world and, not just falling prey to like wellness influencers and following the true, get down to the basics. Like anything that sounds too crazy good to be true, too extreme, I've learned to just kind of weed out. So I don't know if that really answers your question. I can't think of anything
Yeah,
on the
no, it's
spot.
help no, that's great. And if you think of anything, I can always throw it in the show
Yeah.
notes too. So, and as we wind down, I always like to ask my guests, what is your favorite way to slow down right now?
hmm Yeah, I need a lot of that. Like my business just life just gets crazy for me March and April, and I'm like
Mhm.
have to mindfully practice slowing down. So I've probably two ways. Number one is they're like non-negotiables. Is my walk in the morning. I walk my girls to school, and I just do a little extra loop, and then I try once the weather's nice. I've been doing it is my evening walk right after dinner. So, I mean, that's great in the morning because it just helps me to process my nervous energy in the morning. But in the evening, it's a really great way to wind down. That's part of my wind down routine, but it's also great for helping your glycemic, get like your blood sugar, benefiting my sleep. So those are like that's my non-negotiable. And then I had mentioned swapping out scrolling for reading. I love reading now to the point where my husband gets like jealous because I'm always reading. He's like, "Are you reading another book?" But finding a good book, like, for me, is like an escape. Like, I love to read. I wish I loved to read as much when I was, like, in middle and high school and college as
Yeah.
I do now.
Yep, I am the same way. I am
Um,
the same way. I always have a couple books going at the same time too.
yeah.
I just
Yes.
jump into all
Yep.
these
So
different
I have, like,
books
my
and
Dr. Peter Attia book, and then I have my, like, pleasure reading. I'm in a
yep.
book club, but that for me has been really my way to, like, I 9 o'clock, 8:30 rolls around, 9 o'clock, the girls go to bed, I open my book. Like, it is my pleasure. And then Saturday mornings, if we don't have sports to rush off, we do, like, book look, like, "Mommy's reading for the first half hour, please don't interrupt me," and they still
Such
do,
a
but
good role model. That's
yeah.
wonderful. I love
Oh my
that.
god.
That's a great idea. Oh, Gina, it's always a pleasure. We will have you back to talk about lots
Yeah.
more things in the coming months for sure. Just let everybody know. I'll put it in the show notes, but where can everybody find you?
So you can find me on Instagram. I'm at Simply Balance with Gina. I do, like I said, I do lots of cooking on there,
She does
recipes.
the best recipes. They're all like, I'm not a cook, but I feel like I can make them and they're always delicious and
Oh,
healthy and just fun and beautiful to look at and all of it. So, yes, love
that's
it.
thank you. Yeah, I try to keep it simple because most of my clients don't cook or know how to, and I want to make it realistic, you know. Um, so yeah, that's the main place you can find me. I do have a website. Everything I do is simply balance with Gina. So it's www.simplybalancegina.com. So yeah, that's basically where.
Wonderful. I will link it all and I visit all of it often, and I'm sure a lot of our listeners do too. So, thank you for sharing your wonderful insights on sleep. And I hope that everyone gets a really good night's sleep after this
Yes.
episode. Thanks for
I
being
know.
here, Gina.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for having me. Thanks for listening, everyone.